In 1898, a man by the name of Lysenko was born. In school, Lysenko found himself interested in agriculture and performed numerous experiments on crops, including experiments on how temperature variation might affect the life cycle of plants and how, for example, one might turn winter wheat into spring wheat. This process he called vernalization. As his experiments went on, he rejected outright, as did many at the time in Russia, Mendelian genetics, a topic now fundamental to understanding Darwinian evolution and natural selection. His research, despite never becoming a scientist as such, was particularly popular among the Communist Party, to include Joseph Stalin, this on the tails of the famine caused by the communist state in the early 1930s. In 1940, at the age of 42, Lysenko became director of the Institute of Genetics in the USSR's Academy of Sciences, an aptly named institute, an ironic leader, given Lysenko's denial of Mendelian doctrine. In 1948, disagreement with Lysenko's positions and theories was outlawed. Lysenko's ideas were not dissimilar to Lamarckism, but he put his own spin on the ideas of Lamarck, and practically rejected outright any Darwinian ideals of how evolution and transgenerational inheritance worked. He insisted his own theories were his own, a claim that is not entirely untrue. The cornerstone of Lysenko's beliefs were that any body, once alive, obtained heredity, and the entirety of that body was able to pass on hereditary information independent of things like DNA or genetics. Just as today, and this is a topic I'll get into later, we see that biologists and other scientists dismiss Lysenko as pseudoscientific. Even so, he rose to power quickly and was integral for the USSR and Stalin's plans and subsequent failures to rejuvenate their crops. Without being long-winded, some of the ideas Lysenko promoted were milk from cows did not depend on genetics, but how well the livestock was treated. That is, that a well-treated cow would produce more milk. Cuckoos were born when young birds were fed hairy caterpillars by the parent birds. Cells could grow from non-cellular material. And so, with these radical and unproven ideas and promises for new methods that would provide for year-round agricultural work, Lysenko emerged from his proletariat and very poor roots and caught Stalin's eye. Stalin and the communist politicians, wanting to be seen as allies to the proletariat and seeing Lysenko's work, not to mention his fervent Leninism, and believing Lysenko's background to be in line with the communist ideal of a new man, promoted Lysenko such that he acquired his influence that I spoke of earlier. He then went on an anti-science campaign, denouncing biologists as fly lovers and people haters. He claimed that biologists were attempting to purposely disable the Soviet economy. With his power and influence in the Soviet government, over 3,000 of Lysenko's opponents were fired, imprisoned, or executed. Criticism of Lysenko was called fascist, among other things, and it goes without saying that due to Lysenkoism, crop yields in the USSR declined further. But all of this was background for who Lysenko was. What really made Lysenko special was his ability to make a claim without evidence and implement changes in policy that support that claim. Scientists and other respected members in the applicable field would rally to discredit the claim, but before they could, Lysenko would make a new claim. In this way, the voices of logic, reason, and evidence were always one step behind Lysenko, and it's my belief that is why Lysenko was so effective. Fast forward a mere 77 years, and instead of crops, let's take a look at the cultural zeitgeist of the West. Cultural Marxism has taken hold in all facets of academia, theatrics, and media. Men can get pregnant, women can have penises, and any dissent is transphobic or homophobic. The wage gap myth is perpetuated still, despite nowadays being widely disproven, but it took months, if not years, and the new claim is that even if the wage gap doesn't exist, there's still disproportionate representation of women in positions of power, and that's bad enough. Or, God forbid, the topics of race or religion are discussed. Any belief that we should be treated equally, any rational, objective look at statistics, any drawing of any conclusion other than the white supremacists did this to poor people of color narrative is immediately decried as racist. If you believe that your nation should take care of its own people first and foremost, you're called a white supremacist, regardless of your views on race or even what race you are. These claims always put us on the defensive. They must be rebutted because any reasoned individual must flesh out the argument in a coherent way, so such claims cannot go unaddressed. But these modern-day Marxists, in the form of the so-called social justice warriors in Antifa in the West, took a page from Lysenko's playbooks. They're constantly moving the goalposts while we seek always to find the truth, whatever the truth may be. But when we find it, a new claim has been made, and new moral outrage is the nightly news, and no one cares any more about last week's offense, much less last month or last year's. So any facts related to that offense are irrelevant now. One would think that hundreds of years of science or thousands of years of history might suit the average individual for refutation. But in today's decadent, litigious outrage culture of identity politics, where everyone must have an identity and everyone must be equal, what applied then doesn't apply now. In this way, the Marxists and the progressive left are always one step ahead. We are necessarily reactionary to their outrage. They pass laws or write articles which have no basis in reality, appealing to emotion to garner support, call you a racist bigot, and move on to a new cause for which to wave the banner all in the same week. And so, in this way, rational individuals who have valid criticisms of the cultural Marxist narrative are the modern-day fly lovers and people haters. It is but a sign of the decadence of our society when well-reasoned debate and discussion is protested with violence or deplatformed, and new claims about important topics that cannot be refuted immediately are spouted at light speed on Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit, and other social media sites, if not the nightly news. And like the claims that we only use 10% of our brains or that the Great Wall of China is visible from space, an idea or mantra, when repeated often enough, even a false one, is impossible to root out, and it becomes truth, or at the very least common knowledge. So when your opponent is constantly moving the goalposts of the argument, it is imperative to bring them back to where they stood originally, or else it is a battle we cannot win unless we call it exactly what it is. 21st century cultural Lysenkoism.